Drottningholm Palace, or Drottningholm as it's known in Swedish, is one of Sweden's royal palaces. Situated near Sweden's capital, Stockholm, it serves as the private residence of the Swedish royal family. Located on Lovön Island in Stockholm County's Eckerö municipality, the palace was built in the late 17th century and was a regular summer residence of the Swedish royal court throughout most of the 18th century. Today, Drottningholm Palace is a popular tourist attraction. The name Drottningholm, which literally means Queen's Islet, came from the original Renaissance building designed by Willem Boy. It was a stone palace built by John III of Sweden in 1580 for his queen, Catherine Jagiellon. Before this palace, there was a royal mansion called Torvesund. The Queen Dowager Regent Hedvig Eleonora bought the castle in 1661, just a year after her role as Queen of Sweden ended. However, it burnt to the ground on December 30th of that same year. Hedvig Eleonora then engaged the architect Nicodemus Tessin the Elder to design and rebuild the castle. Work began on the reconstruction in 1662. With the castle almost complete, Tessin passed away in 1681. His son, Nicodemus Tessin the Younger, continued his work and completed the elaborate interior designs. The Flemish sculptor Nicolaes Milik created sculptures for the Great Staircase and Hall, including the 9 Muses in marble and a series of busts of Gothic kings. Additionally, Milik made bust portraits of King Charles X Gustav, his wife Hedvig Eleonora, and both their sons, the young King Charles XIV. Probably he also sculpted Magnus Gabriel de la Gardie and his wife Maria Eufrosyne, a sister of King Charles X Gustav. Milik and his assistant Burchard Precht also crafted decorative wood carvings in the Queen Dowager's bedchamber. During the reconstruction period, Hedvig Eleonora was the head of the regency for the still underage King Charles VI of Sweden from 1660 to 1672. Sweden had become a powerful country after the Peace of Westphalia, and the position of the Queen, essentially the ruler of Sweden, demanded an impressive residence conveniently close to Stockholm. During the reigns of Kings Charles II and Charles XIII of Sweden, the royal court was often present at the palace, using it for hunting. Hedvig Eleonora used the palace as a summer residence until her death in 1715, even becoming the undisputed host of the royal court during Charles X's absence in the Great Northern War. Drottningholm continued to serve as a summer residence for the royal court throughout the entire 18th century. After Hedvig Eleonora's death in 1715, Queen Ulrika Eleonora and King Frederick I of Sweden held court at the palace during the summer. In 1744, King Frederick gifted the palace to the then Crown Princess Louisa Ulrika of Prussia when she married Adolf Frederick, who became King of Sweden in 1751. During Louisa Ulrika's ownership, the palace's interior was transformed into a more sophisticated French Rococo style. Louisa Ulrika also had the Drottningholm Palace Theatre rebuilt in a grand style after the original building burnt down in 1762. Louisa Ulrika and Adolf Frederick continued to reside at the palace during their reign from 1751 to 1771. In 1777, Louisa Ulrika sold Drottningholm to the Swedish state. While owned by the state, King Gustav III of Sweden used the palace as a summer residence, hosting grand ceremonial court life, elaborate masquerades and grand theatrical festivities and tournaments in the gardens. During the reigns of Gustav IV, Adolf and Charles XIII of Sweden, the palace was used more sporadically. In 1797, it hosted great festivities when King Gustav IV Adolf's bride, Frederica of Baden, arrived in Sweden, including the last so-called carousel or tournament in the palace garden. After the coup of 1809, the deposed Gustav IV Adolf was held under guard in the Chinese drawing room for 11 days. During the reign of Charles XIV John of Sweden, the palace was abandoned. The king regarded it as a symbol of the old dynasty, and Drottningholm was left to decay. The buildings were damaged by the forces of nature, and their inventories were either taken away or auctioned off. It was apparently open to the public for the first time during this period. A tour was mentioned in 1819, and the public used the park for picnics. Occasionally the grounds were used for public events. In 1823, the bride of the Crown Prince Josephine of Leuchtenberg was received upon her arrival in Sweden, and her name day continued to be celebrated here. Foreign guests, such as Tsar Nicholas I of Russia, were received in the palace gardens. Oscar I of Sweden took an interest in the palace. Though he preferred Tullgarn Palace as a summer residence, he began the first repairs in 1846 to preserve Drottningholm. He used it for public celebrations, such as a reception for Pan-Scandinavian students in 1856, and in 1858, the future Gustav V of Sweden was born in the palace. Charles XVIII of Sweden preferred Ulriksdal Palace as his summer residence and ignored Drottningholm, but Oscar II of Sweden continued the repairs. Both Oscar I and Oscar II were criticized for modernizing the palace and adjusting it to contemporary fashion rather than restoring it to its original state. It wasn't until the reign of Gustav V that the palace and its surroundings were reconstructed to their 18th century appearance. In 1907, a major 4-year restoration began to restore the palace to its former state, after which the royal court began to use it regularly again. Since 1981, King Carl XVI, Gustav and Queen Sylvia of Sweden have resided in the southern wing of the palace. The other parts of the palace are open to the public. Also during this time there has been, just like at Stockholm Palace, a unit of royal guards stationed at the palace. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the King and Queen carried out some of their work from their home in the palace. Otherwise, their official workplace has remained at Stockholm Palace. For the Queen's 50th birthday in 1993, she was gifted a swimming pavilion worth 9 million SEK by the Wallenberg family that was attached to the South Wing's courtyard. To get permission to construct the pavilion, it was constructed in a way that would allow its demolition without harming the original palace. In 2018, the pavilion was renovated for a cost of 744,000 SEK, taken from taxpayer money since it's now counted as a part of a state-owned building, and as such, it is the job of the state to maintain it. The palace and its grounds have seen many renovations, changes and additions over the past 400 years. The largest renovation, in which electricity, heating, sewage and water lines were either installed or updated and the castle roof replaced, took place between 1907 and 1913. During a 20-year period beginning around 1977, several major areas of the palace were restored and rebuilt. The library and National Hall received much of the attention, and fire protection was installed throughout the palace. In 1997, work began to clean and rebuild the exterior walls. This was completed in 2002. The church was designed and erected by Nicodemus Tessin the Elder. It was completed by his son in May 1746. It is still used by the people of Loven Parish, who worship in the church on the last Sunday of every month. Inside the castle church, a Cayman organ from 1730 is still in use. Another noteworthy item is the traditional church tapestry, which was made by Gustav V of Sweden. The Drottningholm Palace Theatre is the opera house located at the palace. It is still in use, and its summer opera festivals are quite popular. At times the Royal Swedish Opera Company guest performs. The Chinese Pavilion, located on the grounds of the Drottningholm Palace Park, is a Chinese-inspired royal pavilion built in 1763 to 1770. The gardens and park areas surrounding the castle and its buildings are one of the main attractions for the tourists that visit the palace each year. The gardens have been established in stages since the castle was built, resulting in different styles of parks and gardens. The oldest part of the gardens was created at the end of the 17th century under the direction of Hedwig Eleonora. The father and son Tessin led the project that created a Baroque garden right outside the main palace, flanked by thick tree avenues. The many statues scattered throughout this area were created by the artist Adrian de Vries. The Swedish army took them as spoils of war from the Wallenstein Palace in Prague, while the 2 marble lions at the main gate of the palace were transported from the Ujazdów Castle in Warsaw. The Baroque garden was neglected along with the rest of the grounds during the 19th century, but was restored in the 1950s and 1960s on the initiative of Gustav VI Adolf of Sweden. Gustav III of Sweden took the initiative for the English landscape garden of Drottningholm. This lies north of the Baroque garden and consists of 2 ponds with canals, bridges, large open lawns, and trees in groups or avenues. Walkways are laid out throughout this large part of the park. Throughout this area, vistas can be seen, cleared lines of sight that are intentionally constructed to draw the eye to a particular view. Most of the antique marble statues throughout the gardens were purchased by Gustav III from Italy. The purpose of the statues is to surprise a visitor by their unexpected appearance in a green area or as a focal point for a vista. The palace is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, mainly because of the Drottningholm Palace Theatre and the Chinese Pavilion. It was added to the list in 1991. The UNESCO comments were, "The royal domain of Drottningholm stands on an island in Lake Malar in a suburb of Stockholm. With its palace, perfectly preserved theatre built in 1766, Chinese pavilion and gardens, it is the finest example of an 18th century Northern European royal residence inspired by the Palace of Versailles."
Don't forget to subscribe to World Wonders Unveiled and turn on notifications.